Welcome to the Fantasy Hockey Guide. In this limited podcast series, my goal is to provide you with everything you need to start playing fantasy hockey. Whether you've dabbled in hockey pools in the past, or even if you've never played before, I'm going to start at the beginning and walk you through everything you need to get set up and start playing fantasy hockey. My name is Mike Rogerson, and welcome to the Fantasy Hockey Guide.
All right, welcome back everybody, and this is not a drill. You did just hear Mike Rogerson, aka Raj, one of the founding members of the Five Hole Fantasy Hockey Podcast's sweet voice, and he is dropping a new and exciting limited series through the channel in the coming weeks, and it will be centered around how you improve, get involved, and begin your journey in fantasy hockey, whether that is as a GM or starting your own league. Good boys and the team here at the Taxi Squad definitely encourage you to check it out, and we will be in touch via Discord and Twitter, and I'm sure Raj will as well, for when the first episode drops. But again, it is a limited series, and we're super excited to have Raj bring out some new fresh content for the listeners of Five Hole. So please, check it out, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of exciting stuff, especially for those that are new at fantasy hockey, but I'm sure he'll have some tidbits and gems in there for you that are going to help us all improve, as we all are looking to do year over year. So check it out, and it is the Five Hole Fantasy Hockey Guide. And I'm sure it's going to be some tasty stuff for the listeners. Stay tuned for that. Can't wait to listen myself, and I'm sure the team here can't wait to listen either. All right, welcome in everybody. We are here. We are finally ready to park the van cab and take a deep breath after our long journey through the division previews with our final installment of the Central Division Part 2. Tonight we will be looking into the Minnesota Wild, the Nashville Predators, the St. Louis Blues, and our final team and final Canadian team, the Winnipeg Jets. So please jump aboard the van cab, strap in because Jay's a wild driver. Let's get the fares kicked off and let's get after it. As always, we are your hosts of the Five Hole Taxi Squad Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Craig, Alan, and Jay. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the pod. How are we doing tonight?
Feeling good.
Excited.
Awesome. How does it feel to be near the end of the journey of the division previews? It has been a long haul, and we have been pumping content out to the listeners. It is an interesting feeling for me in terms of getting so close to the in-season content, but also excited for actual hockey and drafts, and my God, killing myself after drafts, saying, why did I pass on that guy at 2-8 and take this guy who's now injured, 6 weeks into the season? I don't know how you guys are feeling, but just there's a lot of mixed emotions as we continue on this journey together on the Taxi Squad.
Yeah, I really hope our listeners have been picking up those tips and tricks,
so they can snipe us.
Oh, yes. And I guess we did kind of tease it in the Central Division Part 1, but at the end of this episode, we do have a special announcement coming from the Taxi Squad, so stay tuned for that at the end once we get through the teams. Really excited to bring this to you and hopefully have some new listeners and some loyal listeners from the Five Hole community to be a part of it. So stay tuned for that at the end. So let's jump into it, and let's get to our first team of the night, starting with the Minnesota Wild. So why don't you start us off, Alan, and take us through your thoughts on the Wild.
Yeah, Wild have 32 off nights, which kind of the upper echelon of off nights there. But more interestingly, they have 15 back-to-backs, which is tied for second most, which makes my favorite portion of every team that much more valuable here. Goalies, Philip Gustafsson, heck of a year last year. Only Linus Ullmark had a better save percentage and goals against average. Once again, perfect case for 0G. I don't know what you people in Yahoo are doing, but Philip Gustafsson right now is going at 66.3. He's barely even played that many NHL games. Perfect case of not big enough sample size to say that this guy is certified starter material. His PK save percentage was .919, which it sounds like is above average. I'm not sure what the average is, and I'm sure Craig has that information somewhere. So he's likely to regress there. So I don't see him putting up those numbers again. But he did have 55% net share last year. No reason he couldn't be in that 50 to 55% share again, just maybe with not as great stats. And Marc-Andre Fleury, hockey world darling, even he's going a little high in Yahoo, 96.7. I mean, I definitely see him getting 45 to 50% of the net share, because apparently he is 8 wins shy of passing Patrick Roy for second place in all-time wins, which I'm sure the Wild would love to have those jersey sales from that. But in his net share, he still had 24 wins out of 46 games, 285 goals against, 908 save percentage. So with having more of the back-to-backs compared to other teams, Fleury's still, I'm not saying worth a draft pick, but definitely worth picking up when you see Minnesota has that good schedule. Power play controversy here. And breaking news, Kalen Addison signed that $825K 1-year extension. He had 71% of the power play share last year, but he only had 18 power play points to show for it. They did kind of yank him off, and I think some mix of Dumba and Spurgeon throughout the year. And I think Spurgeon, at least to start, gets it. It seems like Minnesota really wants to kind of shelter him before they just, hey, get some points. But the big problem I have with Addison is he doesn't even have peripherals to kind of fall back on if he's not getting you points. So yeah, that 223 Fantrax ADP, perfect sneaky value if, you'll get him for free later on should he seize that top power play.
Jay, I'm just going to jump in with a quick tidbit, because I was having a conversation in the Discord actually earlier today with some listeners on Addison specifically, and I was just looking at some interesting feedback, and the consensus was agreeing with you, Alan. He is a bit soft, and he is a project in a lot of people's minds. And I think for him to really take the next step, Minnesota's flow of play on their power play is going to have to change a little bit. The way that it's driven, top 15 power play in the league from last year, which is an interesting stat, but it's led by the 2 shots on each side of the power play. It's not driven through their defensive point. So Kaprizov and Boldy. Addison's going to have to really, get his points per 60 north of 2 to really take that next step. And I do see Daily Faceoff has him projected as the QB1 quarterback. But I still think I agree with you, Alan. I think you'll see limited minutes because he doesn't do a whole lot from the peripheral standpoint in his defensive zone. Is there upside there? Is there potential there? I'm sure, but is he shaping himself up to be just like a power play quarterback specialist? That to me says he's not going to log heavy minutes as the, whatever you want to call it, quote unquote, 1A defenseman, which I don't believe that he is. So I think that limits his ceiling because he'll have sheltered minutes or limited minutes to begin with. I don't believe he was playing north of 20 minutes last year. Yeah, and I really don't see that changing unless he can change his defensive game. Maybe he gets to 18 this year, and that might help him get a little bit more in terms of 5-on-5 points to help round out his power play contribution. But again, I was saying to the listeners that were having this conversation after his signing was announced, when you have a power play that runs through the circles, not the point, it's going to be tough for Addison to really do anything other than secondary assists on the power play. And I think that's probably why you see he only had 19 points. I don't have that in front of me either. I'd be curious to, and listeners, please reach out to us in either the episode discussion or any of the channels or directly to us. the percentage of Addison's points on the power play that were secondary assists, my guess would be it would be quite high, because the power play is not run through the defenseman, right? It's run through Kaprizov and Boldy. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out. I think Spurgeon does get a little bit more play. Obviously, he'll be the minute muncher in terms of a two-way defenseman. The biggest problem for him is he's a Band-Aid boy, right? Like, he generally misses time. And then your point on Gustafsson, yes, he was alongside the elite goalies last year that played at an elite level. I do believe Fleury will take some starts. Is it a 60-40 split, a 70-30 split? I probably lean towards a 70-30 split, just because of how strong Gustafsson played last year. And this is still very much a two-way hockey team with an exceptionally strong, skilled top six scoring, three pieces, in my opinion, with some supporting members. But we'll get to those pieces. But Jay, don't let me take us off the highway here with the van cab. Let's keep us down the straight and narrow. So let's go with your thoughts, and then we can come back to me.
Yeah, I think the big one with Minnesota, and you hit it bang on, Craig, is still the top six forward setup. Johansson might be arguable compared to the remainder of it, but Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello, Eriksson, Ek, Boldy, this is a strong forward core, and their D-core doesn't adequately reflect that same balanced defensive potential. If you look at their defense, I think Addison's projected for 42 points across, an entire season next year, and he's their best defenseman. Pulling some average stats here, but the average NHL game has around 3 power plays per team a night. So if you're thinking 3 power plays a night and your top defenseman is getting 42 points or averaging around 40 points, that means half of the games projected to play next season in which this defenseman is going to be standing there at the point for the entirety of the game, he's not projected to score. They're not. That is the level of uninvolvement that we are talking about when it comes to the Minnesota power play in terms of the Minnesota defense on the power play. Obviously, Kaprizov, he's going to be gone the first round. Boldy, there's going to be people overdrafting him, probably due to the breakout potential, and rightfully should, right? Like, this guy absolutely stepped up. When Kaprizov was out last season, nothing indicates that Boldy can't repeat or even improve upon that. But Minnesota is definitely a poster child for the Band-Aid boy. Like, Kaprizov was hurt for parts of the season, and he didn't even have that moniker, but I guess he can't escape it. Hartman was gone for a long time. Eriksson Ek was gone. It seems like everybody at some point played some time in that injured roster, an active roster, injured list, whatever we want to call it. And that makes it very difficult for, at least for myself, to jump on any of the Minnesota Wild player bandwagons. Definitely, obviously, if Kaprizov gets there, if Boldy gets to me, Zuccarello, he's that coveted right wing position. But every other player, those 3 aside, is not necessarily unrosterable, but it's difficult to roster in lieu of what their other average draft positions possibly could produce. Like, I'll pick an easy one, simple, straight off. Let's go. Hartman, okay? Hartman is currently being taken around 187, and just along him, in the same vein, there's Chandler Stevenson below him. There's David Perron just above him. There are other players that are going to get more defined minutes that probably have way higher floors and are not Band-Aid boys. They might not get the same deployment, but the argument that's concerning, I guess, with any of these players is they're all so evenly good and balanced out. They're scoring in so many myriad ways. I can't rely on getting any of these players and knowing that for the vast majority of the season, barring injury, they are going to be eating up those power play minutes. One of them, Hartman, has a bad game. Eriksson Ek's going to step up and take a spot, or vice versa.
Jay's smiling at me because he knows I'm coming in hot on some of these takes. So I want to state something for the team and for the listeners. This entire team underperformed below league average on even strengths shooting percentage, including Kaprizov last year. Okay, everybody shot below league average even strength shooting percentage. So that means the entire team, including their three best players, Kaprizov, Boldy, and Zuccarello, have the opportunity to see positive regression from a shooting percentage standpoint, which means more scoring and more points, ultimately more fantasy output from this entire team, whether you see value below their top six or not, or within their other defensemen outside of Addison. That's entirely up to your discretion as a fantasy GM. You know, another point of note, even strength shooting percentage average of a top line in the NHL is around between 10.3 and 10.5. Between Zuccarello, Kaprizov, and Hartman last year, only Kaprizov was above 8%. So that entire line should be better 5-on-5. Let's remove the power play for a second because Kaprizov is elite on the power play. He's the only one over 3 points per 60. I think he is very likely to reproduce what he did last year, especially if he stays healthy. Probably a floor of 85 points, a ceiling of 95, somewhere he falls in there, 40 goals. I think Zuccarello can get back to that 70-point threshold. I think Boldy can break the 70-point threshold. I think Boldy can push for 40 goals this year. He's definitely going to get 30 again. Like, I think Boldy has very, very sneaky value, kind of mid to late rounds, especially, again, Jay, something that you always talk about, the position scarcity on the wing, right? And Boldy, I believe in both Fantrax and Yahoo, is dual eligible, or at least he was last year. I don't know if he still is. I know Yahoo's positions are kind of messed up right now.
He's listed as left wing on Fantrax, but they might add.
You got some dual eligibility with, again, somebody under the hood shows real breakout opportunity playing on, again, an entire team that can see positive regression from a scoring standpoint, especially given, you know, how elite Kirill is and Zuccarello is still a gifted offensive player, even though he's getting older. That's a very interesting under the hood look at this team, and just kind of surprised me as I was doing our show prep today. Was just like, wow, like, it isn't one guy. It isn't three guys. It's the entire team didn't even hit the league average for even strength shooting percentage. Like, that's crazy. Like, and only one guy is over 3 points per 60. Okay, he's the best player on their team, and he's in, maybe top 12 in the league, top 10 in the league. Like, and Ryan Hartman, if he can maintain that deployment, although he didn't perform very well with Zuccarello and Krill when he was healthy last year, he is on a contract year, so he's on a prove it year to get paid, and he is a pretty productive player at even strength. If he can maintain that first line deployment, and you know, he shoots at a pretty good rate too on that line, so I think he has an opportunity to, you know, what's his floor? 60 points, maybe push 65 points. If he's playing with a 90-point player and a 70-point player in Kirill and Zuccarello.
So
right?
if you fade centers, there you go.
He's a nice pick. And Joel Eriksson is a nice fade value pick at the center position as well. And he's a guy who kind of does a little bit of everything, right? Like, he hits, he shoots a lot. He even blocks a little bit as a forward because he does play a little bit of that shutdown role, but he also gets PP1 deployment, right? Like, he's the net front guy. Could it be Hartman? Maybe, but you know, if their whole team is able to positively regress at even strength, I think both of them have, you know, I wouldn't say sleeper potential or breakout potential, because I think everybody knows who they are. They're like 60, 65 point players, but you know, if I was to take one of them in one of my drafts late, if you're fading centers, to Alan's point, I would more likely lean, especially if your league has hits and shots on goal as a category, I would lean Joel Eriksson over Ryan Hartman. But I think Hartman also has value because of who he plays with, right? And then the defensive core I think your only, other value there, because he will see some power play time depending on how effective Addison is Jared Spurgeon. But he is, although a solid quality defenseman, could be classified as a block specialist. Doesn't really hit a lot, but he does shoot at a pretty good clip for a defenseman, and he blocks quite a bit, having 158 blocks last year. And with that potential to be on that power play with their elite players, I think he's got some value, as long as you're not in a contract cap league. You don't want him on your team because his contract is, aging just like he is, not great. And he is a certified Band-Aid boy, and as well, he gets hurt quite often. We do have a big boy banger alert in Marcus Foligno.
One thing, though, I completely think and thought Spurgeon was a Band-Aid boy. Do you know how many games he played last year?
I was just about to say, I think I want to take that back, because I think he played almost a full season, but I think that's his close to his first full season where
I was so surprised.
4 years.
I was like, am I looking at the wrong player with the wrong stat lines? But no, it says he played almost a full season, 79 games, which is incredible.
But even in the projections from Dauber, they show him only playing 75, so he's going to miss some time, right? But again, your point totals in your defense are something to be left wanting more if the projections hit. Not having a defenseman projected to have a floor greater than 50 just shows you that their offense runs through the forward.
Another
group,
one
right?
I was going to cover was, I basically dug up the ADPs thinking, Craig, oh man, you don't like Boldy, you don't even. And then I looked at it. I'm going to read out 3 names that are drafted in the similar area, and I'm just curious which of the 3 you guys would want. If you could get Bratt, Huberdeau, or Boldy, who would you take?
Oh my. Okay, so Huberdeau has the potential to get back to point per game, right? Jesper Bratt, what did he have? 73 points, 74 points last year, right? I think he was close to the 30 goal mark. Who's he to Florida? He's on their second line though, isn't he? He's projected to be on their second line with Jack Hughes and Tyler Toffoli.
I was going to say, I'm leaning Bratt for team environment.
And he's projected to be on the top power play too. I know a lot of people are pumping, and you are, Jay. It's not Huberdeau for me. Something's not right in Calgary. I want them to bounce back. I think they will be better than last year, but just something, as we talked about when we talked about Calgary, I think Alan mentioned it, even Lindholm was asking out at one point, like that. I don't know. I hope.
Hopefully Sutter was the silver bullet, and everything's gonna be rainbows and sunshine. But we'll see. From the
underlying numbers that we have reviewed in these division previews, in all honesty, the way that I draft and where I'm looking for taking quote unquote risks, I would still go Boldy. But I totally understand why Alan would go Bratt, because Bratt's deployment is arguably better. Boldy plays with Joel Eriksson and
Johansson
and old man Johansson, so at even strength. But Boldy still will produce at a very strong level, even with that deployment at even strength, and he'll probably have 25 plus power play points because of how that power play runs between him and Kaprizov. And like I said, I really think he could get to the 40 goal mark this year. And again, like we talked about in the first part of this division preview when we were talking Central, I'm always mining for goals in any format, right? And Boldy is a goal scorer, and under the hood, he is a goal scorer. I'm not sure, and I'm not sold that Jesper Bratt is a goal scorer. He's a playmaking winger in my mind. Yeah, because he plays with Jack Hughes and now Tyler Toffoli. Does that change?
Personally, I don't rate Minnesota very highly as an offensive gunboat.
It's true. Well, and look, the underlying numbers from last year show that, right? Not a single player, including their best player, got to the league average at even strength shooting percentage. That it shows that they're not an offensive juggernaut and maybe play defense first, which they do. They're a strong, well-rounded two-way hockey team. But to me, the Zuccarello, the Kaprizov, the Boldy, they're their three best players by far. Like, I don't see how they don't positively regress based on that fact alone, right? Like, they left quite a bit of points at even strength, regardless of their quality power play output last year. Like, that to me is, and I think, Jay, how many goal games did Zuccarello play?
78.
Was he not injured? I think he missed.
I was
some
also
time.
surprised too, like magically.
So almost a full time.
Yeah,
Old man Zook.
completely what Craig's saying. There is no way this team playing, getting their sticks in the way, bodies in the way, all those things. Somebody is going to get hurt, and Boldy's getting all that time as is.
But you're looking at the numbers from last year. It's proving your point incorrect. They weren't as Band-Aid riddled as you thought. And I'm going to go back like I always do as a PSA to the listeners. Do not draft Gustafsson in the top 60 for the love of God.
Wake up.
It's like, I am all for getting the Gus bus. Like, he's solid and he plays behind a solid team, but not in the first 60
No,
picks.
and
That's
I think
insanity.
this is a case for not investing tons of draft capital in goalies, because you probably got Gustafsson for nothing last season. Like, everyone was probably drafting Fleury.
He might be, oh man, I'm giving away my draft strategies. Oh no, don't do that. Like, he might be the top goalie on my list if he is there in the 12th. Like, I'm going to pull the trigger on that immediately, right? Like, they're going to be a playoff team again. Like, we've talked about it in the Pacific. We talked about it in part one of this.
They're always a playoff team, though. But how far do they make it?
It doesn't matter. I want fantasy production.
Alan,
I don't give a shit
we're
how far
Leafs
they make it.
fans.
I want
the
fantasy
first round
production,
counts.
Right?
That's the cup final
that we always lose.
To me, I think there is like really strong, like really good value on this team, because other than Kaprizov, all of these guys are going to go relatively late, right? Maybe
Boldy's going at 80.
For our listeners. Yeah, Boldy in the top 100 is not crazy, right? Like, I was looking at it the other day. I don't remember where he finished in Yahoo's rankings last year, but like, I definitely see him at finishing in the top 50 quite easily this year at the end of the year.
But as far as guys that could outperform their ADP, Jay, Zook.
Yeah.
Right wing
100%,
scarcity,
100%.
120 on Fantrax. Like, that's money right there.
100%. And I think probably most, like, if Joel Eriksson can stay healthy, because I believe he missed some time last year, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe I'm remembering the Minnesota Wild from 2 years ago. I don't know. I mean,
they're all the same.
He might be a little fried from today. He's going to outperform his ADP. He seems to always do that, especially in a categories league, because of the way he plays. And right now, I'm going to say it. Boldy's going to outperform his ADP. I can guarantee you that 100%. Like, he's one of my dudes, and he's not even on my dudes list when we get to that show. Like, he's going to outperform his ADP regardless of it already being inside the 100, the top 100. Any closing thoughts on the Wild, boys, before we move on?
Value, Boldy. Boldy is the value. I agree. Boldy is the value.
All right, so let's get to team number 2 of part 2 here. And Jay, why don't you kick us off with your opening thoughts on the Nashville Predators?
Yeah, so Nashville is basically a two-headed beast and a two-headed dragon in terms of fantasy value. Everybody knows and understands that they live and die by their defenseman and goalie tandem. There's Saros in net, and there's Yossi to score. Aside from that, like, their team isn't extremely interesting. I know Philip Forsberg produces immense value, and I think it's possibly colored by the fact that he is still injured or hurt. Actually, looking at it again, Yossi is out as well, but I think he should be fully back by the time opening puck drop comes around on October 10th. Oh, there's no news updates on Yossi. Okay, so monitor Yossi definitely, and I stand corrected on Philip Forsberg because he is also back, in which case those 3 names obviously are worth mentioning. Everybody else is very, very, I guess, on a rotating cast of sorts. Don't overdraft any of the names I'm describing. Definitely Saros is an example of a workhorse last season where he did very well. He just didn't outperform his ADP. So again, if you'd taken him later or delayed it as soon as possible, you could have had incredible value. With where he's taken right now, where it says he's being taken 58th overall, it pretty much indicates he's starting off on that entire chain of goalies once people are done drafting their skaters. It's worth it to get the bulk starts. But yeah, if we're moving on to other components, Saros, possible, like, amazing goalie, possibly doubtful on outperforming ADP. Yossi is the classic example of, just like we mentioned with Dougie Hamilton, just like we mentioned before with Adam Fox, you don't get any of these power play quarterbacks growing on trees. You get a chance to get Yossi. You want to start the train, or the train was started and Darlene was taken. Pick up Yossi, make him the second one. The rest of the team really doesn't excite me. It's a mediocre lineup that is carried by the two-headed beast. I mean, even Yossi is projected to score the most as the defenseman. Top line, there's going to be Tommy Novak. Luke Evangelista projects to get some value on the power play. I guess Tyson Barrie could be.
Look at you digging deep, Jay. Look at you. I'm so proud. This is a moment for Jay. Jay doesn't do this. He usually sticks with the bona fide people on teams. This is a moment. Just soak it in.
What desperate times if you're truly on the Nashville Predators beyond Yossi, Forsberg, and Saros. So if you're here and you're trying to get some deep value and grab some of these guys, there are players available, but honestly, it's not a wasteland because, again, Saros and Yossi in seasons past have dragged the Nashville Predators kicking and screaming to the very, very precipice. Even if they didn't make the playoffs, it was interesting to the last or second last week. That will make your fantasy weeks, especially rolling into championship weeks, very, very close, very, very interesting. The inverse is true as well, where if they get out way sooner than your projected playoff push, you can end up with players on your bona fide list that are shut down for the season. So keep that in mind. Like that's a genuine fantasy risk that is part and parcel with a team that we know right from the moment, I guess right from the before a preseason puck is even dropped. We know the Nashville Predators are going to be a bubble playoff team. They're too good. The two-headed beast, the Yossi and Saros, are too good for them not to be relevant, and the rest of the team is too much of an anchor for them to genuinely secure one of the top 3 spots in their division. Sorry, Alan, I'll let you weigh in on
Yeah. So it sounds like we're looking at Erik Karlsson Sens 2.0. if it's like Yossi's going to do it all. So yeah, I would say those elite 3 guys, Saros, Yossi, and Forsberg, you're going to draft them at value and you're going to play them every time they start. But past that, this team has 20 off nights, which is 3rd fewest, and 9 back-to-backs.
Can't even
exactly. So like past those guys, like Ryan O'Reilly, at least to start, may have pretty good value, especially if your league counts face-offs for whatever reason, like mine. Yeah, he'll probably play a lot in every situation, but not known for being a prolific goal scorer. But it seems like Tommy Novak at some point should transition, start being that 1C, but they're both centers, the deepest position. So that's not really where you're going to find like the streaming good schedule value, especially if they have some of the lowest amount of off nights. Behind Saros, you have Kevin Lankinen, who he played all right for Chicago on when they were starting the fire sale, so he can put up serviceable numbers, but he probably may not get more than those 9 starts on those back-to-backs unless something happens to Saros. I hope they don't try to play Saros 70-plus games. I feel like that just increases his risk for injury there.
But that might happen with 9 back-to-backs, eh?
Yeah, because they'll play Saros in both back-to-back games. I mean, Vazzy does it. Why not? But on this team, we got
big boy bangers, baby.
Luke Shen. He only played 15 games, but 60 hits in those games. And then I'm assuming this number is the year before, 258 in 55 games played. He's good for at least 4 hits a game. And I imagine
he's right there with Gudis now, man.
Yeah.
He's like the assistant captain of the big boy bangers.
I imagine
team.
they'll pair him with Yossi, kind of like what they did in Vancouver, where they would pair him with Quinn Hughes and just Shen just throws his body around and lets Hughes open up things offensively. I don't see why they put him in that deployment.
Daily Faceoff has him projected playing with Yossi. Nailed it, Alan. Nailed it.
Yeah. But those are my pieces for this team. I honestly, not past those 3, not a ton of value unless you're categories or face-offs or something. So,
all right. Well, before we go under the hood and look at some of the numbers there, I agree with you guys. Like Philip Forsberg, Yossi are their top, and Saros, but get that Saros out of my face. He's gonna get overdrafted. I don't want it. I don't want to hear it.
Wait, what did we say Gustafsson was, and Saros is less than 10 picks away? Like,
yeah.
What? Do you?
No.
Whatever you're on, can you share with me, people? Like,
yeah, I want the Yahoo people to send me their whatever edibles they're using. Send it to me. I want it. I want to feel that spiral of insanity,
of confidence,
of just to write anything I want and just own it. Like Saros in the top 12 picks, first round. He's a goalie now. Let's do it. I'm gonna change fantasy hockey forever. We're gonna not fade goalies, and goalies are gonna go in the first 2 rounds only. That's what we're gonna do. I know I'm not gonna do that. That's insanity. I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, get that Soros out of my face. He's gonna get overdrafted because yes, he's very good, but the team in front of him isn't great. Because the Western Conference is weak, yes, I'm sure the Predators will be right in the mix for a wild card somehow. But Yossi and Forsberg are their best players. I do find it hard to. Yossi's a monster. Shots on goal. He assists. He scores. A crazy stat under the hood is his shots on goal per 60 last year were 9.6, the highest of his career. And his second highest was 8.8 back in the 2019-2020 season. So that is a lot of shots. Like that's a lot. I still think his ceiling is still that 70-point, defenseman. I don't know how he goes like north of 75. I probably see him falling somewhere between 65 and 70 points just because of the supporting cast that's around him. I know he drives a lot of play on his own, definitely, especially with those shots rates. But he is aging, and I know, Carlson pulled it out of his rear end last year and showed how elite he can be. And Yossi's shots 5-on-5 shooting percentage was right in line with like the forwards league average shooting percentage last year. I could totally see a realm of possibilities that Yossi gets back to that point per game where he has produced in the past, just because of how he can drive play from the point. And let's be real, the power play flows through him, right? So there's definitely an opportunity for 25, 30 power play points from him if he can play the whole season. Dauber has him projected for 72 points. Forsberg probably bounces back this year as long as he can stay healthy. He probably gets back to that 25 to 35 goal clip. I still don't see him kind of breaking that 65 point ceiling, but if he can score at a 30 goal clip and put up 20 power play points and 65 points, again, that's goals are valuable. Shots on goal are valuable, right? Those are the types of guys you want to find. I don't know if one of you have his ADP on hand. I would imagine it's relatively low, considering he hasn't played a full season in a couple of years. Like, he only played 50 games last year. But if he plays a full season, I think he has an opportunity to be that guy again, right? That 30 goal player again. Tommy Novak, this kid, man, I don't know if he's somewhere between a top line center and a third line center, but he looked pretty good last year. I don't think 65 points is probably his ceiling. He's not a huge shooter, so maybe 20 goals, but I still think there's some value for him. I think he can supplant O'Reilly on that first line, which gives him even more upside if he can play with Forsberg. He's projected to be on the top power play with Forsberg and Yossi and Cody Glass and Evangelista. There we go. On their top power play. And let's be real, everybody had high hopes for ROR when he came to Toronto. I'm not sure he can skate anymore. Like, the man can barely move. He's still a decent defensive centerman, but I don't know if he can maintain the pace of a top line center in this league an entire season. So I think Tommy Novak definitely will get a lot of, like, he was sheltered a bit last year. He only played 51 games, but he led the team in points per 60. I know they had some injuries, and it wasn't even close. Like, he was at 3.5 points per 60, and the closest to him was Forsberg, who missed 30 games at just under 3 points per 60. The kid showed that he could be legit, but I think it's somewhere between top line center and a 3C. So a 2C, right where he's scheduled to play, but right? I don't know if he's an elite player. I certainly don't think he will be an elite player, but he did see sheltered minutes. So I think seeing like a full load and being leaned on a little bit heavier to, get to that 17, 18 minutes time on ice next year for a full season. I think, 65 points is probably not out of the question for him. Like, his shooting percentage at even strength playing the top center for the entirety of the season wasn't super inflated. It was kind of right in line with the elite players in the league. Not saying that Tommy Novak is, but he certainly showed flashes that he could fit in as an elite forward in the league, or at least a bona fide top 6 forward in the league, right? So again, he's a centerman, so maybe take a late flyer on him and see what happens in terms of quote unquote breakout potential or sleeper potential. I certainly don't like that they don't have a great schedule for streaming. That's not positive for this team. But Jay, go ahead. You have a thought?
Yeah, one thing in terms of power play deployment and in terms of defensemen also is, if we're mentioning an ex-Leaf Ryan O'Reilly, we got to mention the other ex-Leaf, Tyson Barrie, who also is going to be munching all those power play 1 and power play 2 minutes. No. Now,
and Evangelista is projected to be on the point with the OC right now on PP1. Barry's on.
I say Barry's ceiling, his floor even are tied to getting anything on the power play. Other than that, no thanks.
But if Yossi is not starting the season, and he takes a couple, could be some sneaky early.
There you go, yeah, because everyone's going to draft Yossi where he goes, and then you scoop up Barry down at the bottom and get something
Barry
for that first
week
or two.
Some sort of offensive upside. But as Jay 100%. Knows, as I know, as any Edmonton Oilers fan knows, even if he's playing with the best players in the world, he still knows how to disappear. It's just
hold on though. That season he was in the Edmonton power play. He was like,
I watched him enough in
points by a defenseman.
He was. I watched him enough in Toronto. That is a byproduct of who he was playing with. Like, he literally just had to put the puck on the stick of Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl and just say, thank you for the secondary assist. Thank you for the primary assist. I'll take my 80 points and my big paycheck.
One paycheck, please.
Okay, he maybe has 45-point floor in Nashville, just because he probably is going to get more minutes than he should, because there isn't a whole lot of other offensively gifted defensemen on this team. No, don't do it. Please don't do it. If you want to, for the first couple weeks and then kick him to the curb, if you draft Yossi and then you draft Barrie, I understand that. Take the guy if Yossi's not ready for the beginning of the season. Even in Nashville, 24 games, his shooting percentage was below league average. I know he's a defenseman and we're talking about, but his points per 60 are not even 1.5, right? So that's a floor of 40 to 45 points, somewhere in that vein.
That's an $8 million contract in Toronto, right there.
I totally get your point, Alan. There was a year where he was the top. I believe you're right. I think he was 1 or 2 in defensive scoring that year. But I think that was a lot of byproduct of who he was playing with in Edmonton. Like, no doubt about that. And he obviously fell out of favor there and got moved. That's because he can't play defense.
Him and Klingberg, human
God damn it. Don't bring him up, okay? We don't need to know that he's on the Leafs.
Power play
and I have to watch
one.
another Swiss cheese defenseman.
I was going to say, did we have anything to say about that right wing? Because the right wing looks really interesting.
Yeah, look,
right?
they have
Parsonen,
some very
Tomasino,
interesting
Evangelista.
young players with all have high draft capital. They have potential because of where they were drafted in terms of high-end skill. I don't think we're at the point where they break out yet. Out of the group, I like Evangelista probably the most, besides Novak. I think Cody Glass gets a little bit more run this year just because Ryan Johansson is gone. But Parson, Tomasino, like Tomasino especially, he showed a couple of times of flashes last year, but they're the future guys. Like, they're watch list guys if they get hot. Unfortunately, like Alan said, they don't have a opportunistic streaming schedule, so even if they get hot, maybe it's not. But like, if he got regular run at like 17, 18 minutes a game playing second line, there might be some potential there that's untapped. But like, again, those young guys probably all a couple of years away from making a real fantasy impact. This team will definitely have some energy because of them, I think. And I think having hopefully a full year of Philip Forsberg, I like Philip Forsberg as a player. He's fun to watch.
But I know we were talking about Philip Forsberg's ADP earlier, and that is, that hurts me to look at. Like 68.9 in Fantrax, but Yahoo, someone's asleep at the wheel. 140 for Philip Forsberg.
Oh man, that's value, baby.
Yeah, 70 point guy going 140.
I'm sniping that. What is that? Like ninth round, 8th and the 10th round, right? Like that's.
Yeah.
If you get him in the 10th round, you are laughing.
I'll punt goalies even further and take Philip Forsberg.
Yeah, you're laughing to the bank. You're taking
so I think, like, in summary of this team, before we move on, I think it's Forsberg and Yossi first and foremost. Saros, if you can get him at value, where that value is entirely up to the GM and how they're strategizing. But again, taxi squad, fade goalies, please. That is our recommendation. Do it. Win your league by skater categories. And that's all I'm going to say on that one. And then the late round flyer for me is Novak, big boy banger, club, Luke Shen. If you want some potential for offensive output in a depth defenseman, sure, Tyson-Berry. Another decent categories depth defenseman is Dante Fabro. Contributes in all categories, blocks, hits, and shots on goal, especially for a third pairing defenseman. I was looking for another young player, but I'm not going to mention him because I don't see him projected to make the team on daily faceoff. So I don't want to dig too deep into the Predators. But any closing thoughts on these guys?
Let's keep booking.
I think it's time. It's time to
all
meet
right,
me in
Alan,
St. Louis.
why don't you take the van cab over to St. Louis and kick us off with your opening thoughts?
Yeah, they have 26 off nights, so kind of lower end, probably lower middle. It hurts to start with goalies here. Jordan Binnington.
Don't do it.
Jordan Binnington to me is the poster child for what can
poo?
go wrong.
For poo, right?
Yeah, for poo. The poster child for poo and goalie fights. Well, pretend goalie fights anyway.
Like the whiniest player in the NHL, maybe? Like, my God.
That first year he broke out, I'm sure everyone picked him up for nothing. And then since then, he's been highly overrated and continued to just decline year after year. Last year he had a 3.31 goals against, 894 save percentage. Good God, man, this is the guy who won a Stanley Cup not that long ago. At least the ADP for him is fine, like 212 Fantrax, 171 Yahoo. At least people have jumped off.
Do not draft Jordan Binnington. Do not. No, he is a streaming spot start goalie at best.
Not even that. No, not even then. But I will say watch list Joel Hofer.
Yeah, he showed some really good flashes last year for sure. Yeah.
Billy Huso effect. I mean, when Binnington was pretending to throw punches, man, they throw Billy Huso in there and he bailed him out.
I feel like it's easy in St. Louis when you're the backup goalie because nobody has any expectations for goaltending there because what Binnington has done. So it's just like, as the backup, when you go in, you're just like, yeah, whatever, man. I just need to stop like 5 pucks and I'm better than this clown. So like, I'm going to show that I've got so much talent. I'm going to cash in on that.
And go to Detroit. So it looks like Krug, with his albatross contract, is injured to start the season.
Jay, as we were talking St. Louis defenseman before the show, you and I should just put our hands back, sit back, and let just let Alan take the listeners to defenseman town on the Blues. Okay.
No, at least for power play. Like and Krug, man, I think even when he comes back, he is in the doghouse because he wouldn't be a team player and waive the no trade clause they gave him, which defeats the whole purpose of having that in your contract, I feel. I think at least to start, it's just the Justin Folk show and foreshadowing. He is one of my guys for our My Guys show. With less than 50% power play share last season, he had 50 points, which that I remember from Fantasy Hockey Podcast days. That is a unicorn. Is any defenseman that can put up more than 40, 45 points without that majority share of top power play, and he'll give you some category coverage. He had 1.8 hits per game, 1.5 blocks. It's some nice coverage, especially in points leagues where you value those things. But it looks like on the horizon, yeah, you have Prunovich. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it. You nailed it.
Yeah, so I could see definitely, even if Krug doesn't get traded, he's backseat, man. You're no longer behind the steering wheel. Sneaky value play for me, Jakub Vrana. I don't know what age he is, but he's finally starting his career. Even in the limited flashes they gave him on Power Play 1 last season, put the biscuit in the basket for him. I think 30 goals is, with the right deployment, a nice ceiling for him. And this guy looks like Fantrax going 186. He is absolutely perfect case for draft for that high ceiling in those last rounds. And if it doesn't work out, you punt him and try the next guy.
You know, Craig, Alan, that's music to Craig's ears, baby. That's what you're talking
No,
about.
this is, and I even remember from, again, Fantasy Hockey Podcast days, like those first few rounds, you draft for the floor, and then at the end of the draft, that is your bet all on black and hope for the moon.
Yeah, just to touch on Vrana before Jay jumps in, is just he played 20 games with the Blues last year after that trade. His even strength shooting percentage was right at league average, 9.5, or just slightly above. I think league average is 9.3 last year. His points per 60 were 2.8. Yeah, I totally see the floor this year being 60 points and potential for 25 to 30 goals. Daily faceoff, unfortunately hasn't projected to be on the third line with Kevin Hayes and Jake Neighbors, but he is projected to be on Power Play 1. But St. Louis does do your typical Western Conference team thing. They do roll all 4 lines, so they will have more even distribution of time on ice, for Vrana, whether that's 16 minutes, 17 minutes, maybe even pushing 18 minutes some nights. But there is a world where he does get into the top 6 in my mind. Again, another ex-Leaf because they're everywhere. He's a better offensive player than Kasperi Kapanen. Kasperi Kapanen is like Ilya Mikheyev light. Also shoots, but can't ever hit the net or finish. So to me, that's not a bona fide top 6 player. And do you really want your newly named captain, Braden Shen, playing with Kasperi Kapanen all year? Yes, that's breaking news. If nobody saw it today, Braden Shen was named the newest captain of the St. Louis Blues. I just wanted to touch a little bit on the underlying numbers for Rana and agree with my taxi squad driver Alan that I think positive ceiling, and I think he's actually found a home where he's going to get real deployment for the first time in his career ever. Again, right wing position scarcity at huge value if you're getting him that late for sure. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Right wing position scarcity is basically the same.
I could see you getting just super excited to talk about this team because it's all position scarcity on this team for sure.
This team honestly is summed up in obviously Ala's description on Vrana being 185th ADP. Like basically, like look at this team. Possible deep value, of course. You're drafting 192 players in an average 12 team, 16 man roster team. You are not going to draft any. So anybody 200 and beyond is, like oceanic, right? Like you're picking them for random weeds, left, right, and center. Kyrou is drafted 62nd overall. Kyrou is not a bad player. No,
he's their best player.
He's point per game. Right? Like he's incredible. 62nd overall. That's in the same area with Johnny Gaudreau. That's in the same area with Quinn Hughes, Brandon Montour. Like Kyrou is Kairou's there because he's right wing, and the next guy after him is Buchnevich. And again, sure, like. Also almost a point per game player. Both of these guys are the St. Louis Blues team's value. Like, that's pretty much end of. Everybody else is hovering on the border of draftable or not draftable. I did forget about Justin Folk, but yeah, Justin Folk, obviously, he's mainly there also because of positional scarcity. He fills all those categories. But again, this team is not going to be scoring a ton. This team is going to have Kyrou get his minutes and points. Buchnevich gets his minutes and points. And I'm not even certain that Robert Thomas is like capable of shooting the puck.
No,
like,
he's one of those guys that passes it into the net.
He could actually get 80 points just by playing with those two players, and he would have like 70 assists. Shoot.
Okay.
The
Yeah. Okay.
puck,
All right.
Man. Yeah. Like, how are you the top C on this team? You don't shoot the puck.
He's definitely allergic to it. And yes, Alan is spot on. He passes the puck like straight into the goalie. I guess he goes 5-hole each time. Obviously, there's going to be somebody that needs to score or pass to Kyrou and Buchnevich, but past those two guys in the positional scarce right wing and Justin Folk, who's blocking all the other shots, because Lord knows Binnington isn't blocking or saving any of them, it's kind of difficult to find value. I was even surprised that Krug played any games last season. I was looking and I was like, wait, so he actually did end up playing 49 games.
I can't wait to draft against Jay because all these guys he's going to target, there's no way you're getting all these guys on your team. Like, you have to look at deeper value, my man. You have to.
He's going to use that full minute or whatever you allow for each pick.
He's going to be like IMing me like, Craig, you were right. I don't know what to do. I thought all these guys are going to be available. What do I do?
I guess the three-headed defensive beast between Krug, Folk, and Perunovich, I think is going to be an interesting thing to monitor, given that obviously Krug, you'd assume, would take the reins.
But even when he's had it,
but
he's
again,
been
he's
terrible.
He hasn't been good, man, and I kind of agree with Alan. I don't, if he isn't, like, he's out long term, I find it very hard to believe, even if he's back after Christmas, which I believe is what he's scheduled to be. I find it very hard to believe that he'll take PP1, even if they're splitting time from Folk and Perunovich at that point. I don't see that because Krug is, he's one of those guys to me, like, everybody has always thought he was a good offensive defenseman, but he actually might not be.
It's probably just a product of that elite Boston core.
Yeah, I think he just played, again, similar to Barry, he played in an elite time period with a Boston Bruins team that was like in their prime and stacked like beyond belief. And then he cashed in and then just kind of disappeared and couldn't stay healthy. Like his underlying numbers are not good. Like, he didn't miss as many games as I thought last year. He played 63 games, like 1.6 points per 60. Like, that's your power play quarterback. Again, this goes back to almost like our Minnesota conversation. So that means his ceiling is like 45 points. Get that out of here. Get that out of here. No.
It might be more damning that he didn't miss as many games as he
Folk
did.
has the same points per 60, and to Allen's point, produced at a higher clip on the power play with less power play deployment. So there might be an opportunity for positive regression for Falk with having more power play deployment, even if he does split it 50-50 with Perunovic, which is where, like, you know, if you look at a lot of the content providers, the hockey writers, that's who everybody's predicting is going to take it. But I do, you know, when we were talking pre-show, I do agree with Allen. I think Falk probably gets the same deployment as he's getting, if not a slight improvement on that. And I think Allen and I were talking pre-show, like, I could see it probably being out of camp, because Perunovic is kind of like an unknown commodity at this point.
Yeah, I think he's only
right?
played a handful of games.
Like, you don't know what he can even do in the defensive zone at this point. So, like, you know what Falk is. Like, Falk is going to just eat the minutes with Parayko, and, you know, Nick Leddy, is he like 45 years old? Like, he's projected to be in the top pairing. Like, I feel like Parayko and Falk are going to eat all the minutes on this team, right? And Parayko, to me, has some sneaky value in categories leagues with a little bit of upside, even strength point production. He's kind of always had that in his arsenal. But, you know, 139 blocks, 95 hits, 124 shots on goal, and that's like all at even strength. That's pretty good. I've even seen in a couple of my leagues over the years, like, people taking him as their fourth defenseman. You know, I'm surprised he didn't get the captaincy or, you know, Kyrou. Thank God they didn't give Robert Thomas, but like Braden Shen, like, man, like Braden Shen
He's a big,
might be
beautiful winger, though.
Yeah, like, he does a little bit of everything, and I don't think, but he just hasn't performed to what he could be. I think, like, his ceiling to me is
he's about a 60, 65.
Yeah, 60, 65 point player, probably in and around 25 goal ceiling, right? But I agree with you. He falls into our big, beautiful winger category. He hits, he shoots, does a little bit of blocking. But I guess he's a better candidate to be the captain than Robert Thomas. That would have been super boring. Like, nobody wants a guy who just passes the puck and does really nothing else as their captain.
Intangibles, man, intangibles.
But I thought it would be Parayko, but I guess he's just an assistant captain still. But no, I think. And there's definitely, like, value here. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Buchnevich. He had some ups and downs last year and, like, still netted out in, like, the 70-point range. Personally, Jay, I don't think he's a points per game player. I think he's probably ceiling is 75 points, 30 goals. And like, yeah, his underlying numbers are solid and strong. Like, in 63 games, like, he topped the team in shooting percentage 5v5. He topped the team in points per 60 at 3.3, just above Jordan Kyrou. You know, I don't particularly believe in Buchnevich as much as I do Kyrou. I think Kyrou's their best player. I think Kyrou's ceiling is, like you said, point per game or in and around 80 points. I think Kyrou could push, you know, north of 30 goals. I think Rob Thomas, just because he plays with those guys, I wouldn't draft him. He's probably a streamable center at the position just when he's running hot. His ceiling's probably 65 to 70 points just because of the two wingers that he plays with. Man, like, shoot the puck. Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't want to see you have 10 goals and 60 assists this season. Like, get out of here. Like, nobody wants that. That's boring, and no, you don't want that on your fantasy team.
There was one thing I have to ask before, obviously, the Jets roll around, but I have to ask Alan. What game do you think they're going to say, screw this, we're going to roll with Hofer and see what he does?
Ooh, how many games in does Binnington get the bench? I like this.
I take
20?
No, I take the under on 20. 10 is
40.
Probably where I'd say plus or minus 1 or 2 games.
Hey, we have a big boy banger on this team, Sammy Bayless, okay? Sammy Bayless on the fourth line, right? Yeah. Is that his last name, right?
Blaze.
Bayless, right? Blaze. Sammy Blaze. Even better.
420
That's
Blaze
sick,
it, yeah.
Sick fucking hockey name. I just want to draft him because of his name. That's sweet. Yeah, 242 hits. Like, that's a big... He's on the Big Boy Bangers team for sure.
With some slight point upside.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of sneaky point upside, right? So solid depth guy for your categories leagues and any league that has hits for sure. We like the Big Boy Bangers here at the Taxi Squad, that's for sure. We're always on the lookout for them. Thank God the West has more of them. Some of those Eastern Conference teams are just like, my God, somebody hit somebody. This is boring. Yeah, like some sneaky points upside from Blaze, right? Fourth line with Oscar Sundqvist and Alexei Tropchenko. Also a kind of a cool hockey name. You know, Jake Neighbors, also high draft capital, plays a more of a shutdown role now in his third year. Could he push for a top six role? Like, I know people like to stream Brandon Saad, but like, no.
That's just Saad.
Yeah, like, it's just Saad, man. Like, don't do that. Me personally, I like to see Neighbors or Jakub Vrana more so in the top six versus, you know, and I understand Braden Shen and Kasperi Kapanen and Brandon Saad are their shutdown line, but that's typically not. You don't usually roll your second line to be your shutdown line. It's usually your third line. And like Kevin Hayes is not a shutdown center, really. Like, is Kevin Hayes even good anymore? I know he had a couple of decent seasons in Philly.
I was about to say he was only one of two people scoring in Philly like the first part of the year last year.
He could maybe have some.
Wait, this is the first time I've heard that people actually were scoring in Philly.
Oh yeah, I think I streamed Kevin Hayes for a little bit last season. Like
he had some good hot streaks last year when the team was playing a bit better, when Tippett was kind of stepping up. He had some good hot streaks. So I wonder if, like, because of how they also roll all four lines, I wonder if that kind of, other than Verona, because I think you draft Verona for sure, but like Hayes, Neighbors, maybe watch list after drafts. But yeah, like, this team certainly has value. Get the goalies, again, out of my face. Don't want to draft either of them ever. I'll stream Hoffer if he gets the net for spot starts, but Binnington, just go. Can't even handle guys chirping him. He's a 31-year-old man. Like,
I wish they had was it Fleury that almost fought him?
Should have let a couple guys knock him out.
I feel like if they had let someone hit him, like, that'd be the last we'd hear of his shenanigans.
I don't want to say I don't like this team, because I'd like pieces of this team, but I don't like this team.
The value's all tied to Kyrou.
They're not making the playoffs, this team, because they don't have any goaltending, regardless of how, quite frankly, their defense is actually pretty good, like, overall, in terms of defensively reality, right? They are a bit older, but I think they have a pretty good real life defensive core, right? Like, I wonder if we had this defensive core in Leafs land, if we could be any better. Probably not, but
well, you'd throw Martin Jones in net, and that would, that'd fix everything.
Let's get back to finishing off this Central Division preview. And Alan, why don't you start us off with your thoughts on, again, the man is rocking another divisional t-shirt. Yeah. He's rocking the team. We're going to finish our divisional previews on the final team of our divisional previews, the final team of the Central Division preview, and the final Canadian team, the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, rocking my Line A jersey. But anyway, they have 29 off nights, which kind of lower middle of the pack. 8 back-to-backs, which I feel bad for Connor Hellebuck for more than one reason. So before I actually get into any players, like, I'm not sure stripping Wheeler of the sea and then shipping him out. Well, not shipping him out, but buying him out was the silver bullet for their locker room problems. All contingent on where they're sitting on playoffs. I watched the trade rumors for Scheifele and Hellebuck because they are both on contract years. Hellebuck, probably the more useful piece if he gets dealt than Scheifele. I think Scheifele would just be a depth piece. Like, he would not be, 1C top power play if he gets dealt somewhere. He'd probably be like a 2C, 3C for a team that just wants to really stack up. And now I can correct myself. This is the team that I felt got the best out of the PLD trade that they could. 2 NHL ready guys in Iafallo and Velarde. Although it turns out Velarde's aspiring to be a Band-Aid boy. I don't even think he played half a season last year, but I mean his pedigree's there should he get a chance and manage to stay healthy. But yeah, now that the back-to-back bad news for Connor Hellebuck, he is absolutely one of those guys who is, if they can start him 70-plus games, they will start him 70-plus games. Be pretty good at it. Definitely in that top tier 3 to 5 goalies off the board because of being a workhorse and being a talented goalie in his own right. And, looks like they got Laurent Brossoit back from Vegas, who he put up decent numbers in Vegas, but that was just a kind of a rotating carousel of goalies that, it was a matter of who could stay healthy. But I know in the past he was their backup and was serviceable. So, but I wouldn't count on Brossoit getting more than those 8-9 back-to-back starts. Morrisey, everyone's talking about how he is absolutely going to regress some. I mean, his situation hasn't changed, but I see where that shooting percentage was a little high. Big boy banger on their D squad though, Brendan Dillon, 198 hits, 108 blocks in 82 games last year. So if you need those bang categories.
Love that.
And Neil Pionk, I seriously thought he was locked for top power play when he got dealt to the Jets, but apparently it's that handedness thing, right?
An offensive defenseman that everybody wants to be good, but he doesn't get the opportunity to be good.
No, that's why I was like, after he left New York, I'm like, this is it. This is his chance. Now, Josh Morrissey. But he'll give you some category coverage, and he does have that slight 25, 30-ish point upside. Definitely not someone you draft or invest a lot in, but he's there for you.
Jay, before you gush all over Josh Morrissey, just regression is happening, okay?
Both ways for this team.
But yeah, this team has so many questions from the ADP. Everybody believes in the Jets. Connor's drafted top 30. Ehlers is 86, which I think is an insane
It's so
draft.
weird.
Like that's the area right after
to get just slept on, and he was that right at drop pickup.
All
level.
he needs just a Cole's notes on Ehlers, because I'm not going to dive too deep in on him. Under the hood, he is one of their most elite players, but he doesn't and never has been given that opportunity. And because Scheifele plays where he would potentially fit in on the power play, he's never got that opportunity for that deployment. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, they've never trusted him to play him at that, 17, 18 minutes a night clip. But his points per 60 were the highest on the team, 3.2. And his even strength shooting percentage just below league average. He's a great player, but I don't know. They've got new coaching. Maybe that gives him an opportunity finally, but I still don't. He's still not projected to be on PP1, so that hurts his underlying value. But carry on, Jay. Continue, please.
I'm sure Ehlers is going to do well. Last season's big, mark against him was the fact that he missed half the season. He's not 87th or 86th overall. He's not better than Skinner. He's not in the same ballpark as Boldy or even Reinhart, right? That is an insane overdraft in my opinion.
He's more of a prove it kind of guy now. In all honesty, everybody sees the opportunity, the potential, the high end skill, the underlying numbers also state that it's there. But realistically, I don't know. I don't think he's had a true breakout season yet, right? Everybody's still waiting for it and hoping for it and wanting it. Mm-hmm. And could he finish in the top 100? Absolutely, he could. Will he? I don't know. I don't know.
And definitely don't draft him before the 100. With that history and with that, pure lofty vision and dream in your mind. A player you definitely should draft, though, that is going even after Ehlers, Scheifele. Scheifele, I think at certain points, he might now only be center eligible, which would certainly mean no position scarcity and definitely, keep that in consideration. But Scheifele, like, there is no Pierre-Luc Dubois on this team anymore who is going to be eating all those assists that Kyle Connor will mop up. It is Scheifele, and it is Scheifele. That's it. At 97th overall, the guy assisting Kyle Connor, I want in on that. Absolutely. The other guy that is incredible sneaky value, especially getting PP1 time, Niederreiter. I don't even think people know the man exists. He's going to be there soaking up all that time together with Scheifele, with Connor, and Morrisey. He's being drafted 238th right now. He's not
currently on Daily Faceoff.
Drafted.
He's not projected to be on PP1. It is, in fact, Ehlers that is projected to be on PP1 with Velarde, Scheifele, Connor, and Morrisey. Now, if that right
at deadline, Niederreiter spent some time up there, but
he did. Yes,
to start, who knows?
Yeah, so I guess like Velarde and Niederreiter, those two definitely keep your eye out on, because Velarde as well, he's being drafted 203. One of those guys is going to be getting all that PP time, and if they get Jets power play time, first power play time with Connor, with Morrisey, they are not going to be finishing 200th or anywhere close to 200th
I think
overall.
You have three guys locked in on PP1. You have Connor, Scheifele, and Morrisey, and then you have, most likely with all the new pieces in this team, and Ehlers hopefully 100% healthy, you probably have two spots that rotate probably to begin the season to see who fits with those three guys and can get the most production out of that group, right? Like this power play, even though Morrisey exploded last year, was 23rd ranked in the league. Like, with the skill level that they have, you would assume their power play would be much better, and a breakout season from their power play one quarterback. You still only had the 23rd ranked power play.
Right.
I don't know if that screams positive regression on the power play or not.
Connor and Scheifele both had slightly lower shooting percentages versus their careers.
That is what I was going to bring up. They both shot, actually almost all the forwards in their top six last year shot below their career shooting percentage. So there is positive regression, you would assume, in their forward group, especially, like you said, Alan, with Scheifele and Connor, which is good because Connor went through some cold spells last year that he didn't even really look like Connor, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I was there. I have him.
And I don't think he does that this year. I think he is a points per game player with 40 goal upside, shooting close to that 300 shot mark for the season. Scheifele's in a contract year, so don't think he's not trying to get 8 for 8, right? Or 6 for 6 or whatever they're willing to pay him. He's probably not going to get that in Winnipeg.
I was going to say, will it be for this team?
Probably not. Probably not. I still think there's value here beyond those three. I definitely don't see Morrisey doing what he did last year. I think his ceiling to me is 70 points. Especially with like the question marks we're discussing right now. I don't think they're a bad hockey team. They have a great goalie. They have a good back end. And they now have some even more promising young pieces in their forward group. Like Velarde, you guys are speaking to, wants to be a certified Band-Aid boy. But like he had 31 points in 45 games to start the year last year. And now he's going to get better deployment.
Oh, and especially if they ship Scheifele.
Yeah.
1C.
But even at the 2C, playing with, projected to play with his, familiar line mate that he has played with in the past in Iafallo, and another young up and coming forward in Perfetti. Like, I think that's a pretty nasty little line in terms of high end potential offensive production at even strength. And then if Velarde can get some PP1 power play time, which is what he did in LA, like he is a finisher and a good distributor. Like I think he has probably a ceiling and probably of 60 points if he can stay healthy. And I know he doesn't have a proven track record of showing that, but Perfetti, I think, also has around that 60, 65 point ceiling, especially with that younger second line. Iafallo, we know what he is. 55 points, 20 to 25 goals, somewhere in there. Yeah, I think there's definitely question marks with this team, but I think there's also going to be good depth value here. There'll be some streaming candidates that you want to grab when they're running hot, like Nino Niederreiter, like Jay mentioned. I like Neil Pionk, kind of like I like Colton Parayko. He does a little bit of everything, has some offensive upside, would probably be next man up if anything happened to Morrisey. Like it's only like 2 years removed where they were like competing for power play 1. So it's not out of the realm of realities that he could see some PP1 if something happened to Morrisey. Morrisey obviously solidified himself there last year based on his performance, but yeah, I think he negatively regresses, but I don't think it's like an extreme negative regression, right? Like I think he's probably in that realm of 60 to 65 points, pushing 70 points. I know the listeners and us have all discussed about like breakout and sleeper and all that kind of stuff, but like Perfetti, Velarde, Niederreiter, probably all in that kind of conversation, depending on who kind of locks down that PP1 opportunity with the team. Other than, Dylan DeMello and, like you mentioned, Brandon Dillon, there isn't like a really, Neil Pionk almost approaches that. He wants to be a big boy banger. I think my biggest question for this team, and it'd be very interesting, is can Ehlers be the guy that everybody wants him to be, right? Because I think if he can stay healthy and get real true deployment, man, that could be a true breakout year because of what the underlying numbers say of what he could be. His even strength IPP is almost 90. Like that is exceptionally elite. That's up there with McDavid and Pasta and those kind of guys from an IPP standpoint. And the only reason I throw that stat out is because it stands out big time from a guy who only played 45 games. Like that's a big number at even strength, and leading the team in points per 60, only playing 45 games, and has an opportunity for positive regression from a even strength shooting percentage as well. But like it's going to come down to deployment for him, which he's never really had, and he does have troubles staying healthy. I think the new coaching will help. I think you draft for hope with him. I think with everybody else wanting him to be awesome, right? And then you got the young kids on the second line. Other than Iafallo, everybody kind of knows what Iafallo is. But what's Velarde? What's Perfetti? Perfetti did miss some time last year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he only played 51 games last year. I think those were also in sheltered minutes. But he showed some flashes as well as being somebody who can hold his own in the top 6. What is this team going to be good? I'm not sure.
I wanted to ask that as well. I'm looking at the roster, and obviously some players are solid, but let's say Hellebuck plays out of his mind. Morrisey doesn't regress significantly. Connor and Scheifele both positively regress strongly. Do we see this team standing atop the Central?
They did at one point last season.
I don't think so either. They did. You're right. Yeah, they
Hellebuck
severely dropped all the way down.
Definitely carry this team. Like there's no, like he's proven to do that in the past, but like they're gonna need consistent secondary scoring behind Connor and Scheifele, and let's give the guy the credit that he deserves, and Morrisey. And that's probably the biggest question mark of this team is where does the secondary scoring come from? If Velarde and Perfetti don't reach that potential of 60 points and they fall in that 50 to 55 points, is that enough from your second line? I'm not sure if your entire second line is a 50 to 55 point players. I'm not sure they'll be able to score enough, right? And Morrisey, I think is still a question mark. Is he the guy you saw last year, or is he the guy he was before that? 50, 55 point defenseman, right?
Yeah. Key points too as well. Morrisey it remains to be seen whether or not it was just a one season one-off wonder.
He's never done that before, right? Like he's never produced at that level in his career.
But to be fair, neither has Montour.
Okay, that's a fair point. But Montour is on a more skilled team. So is what Montour did more sustainable? Is my question. I don't expect anybody to answer that because I don't have the answer, because I'm not saying that Morrisey can't do it again, but he's not Erik Karlsson. But Montour, from a sustainability standpoint, that team is more offensively skilled than this team. Now, I'm not saying that the Winnipeg's power play can't positively regress, but is Morrisey a player that we all believe can drive play on the power play by himself? Like, I would love to see, and I don't have those numbers in front of me right now, where his points came from on the power play. Were they secondary assists? Were they primary assists? How many goals did he have? 12, if I'm not mistaken? 16. Like, I don't think he scores 16 goals next year. Let's be real here.
I mean, his opportunity hasn't changed.
True. It's fair. Yeah. The biggest thing for me is like he's never done this before. I wish I had the career points per 60 in front of me. I only have last year's. I'm telling you right now, like I see regression. Maybe not a complete fall off, but 16 goals. Come on. Look, do you have his career stats in front of him? Or in front of you, Jay? Can you pull those up while we're chatting here? So as we all do, as Jay's doing that, as we all do to wrap the episodes, and thank you to the listeners for taking this journey of division previews, and we finally made it around the league. We were going to bring the van cab back to the East Coast now. We will now park the van cab, give it a little thought, and each of us will give you who we think will be the top 3 teams in this division, and then also give you a couple of my guys, my dudes that we will be either on our draft boards, targeting in our drafts, or really believe in from this division. So, Alan, do you want to kick us off with your top 3?
1 and 2 are pretty clear cut. Colorado, Dallas, not necessarily in that order. I do think, compared to everyone else in this division, I do think Winnipeg is third, and then they hang on to everyone. Guys, I'm not necessarily drafting, but definitely watch list, pick up Joel Hofer.
I'm so glad that you're dropping a goalie and the backup goalie of the St. Louis Blues. That is fantastic.
He is. I am watching him like a hawk, man. Especially because I don't draft goalies till the last round or two, and it's just scraps at that point. And then I'm watching who gets the sidecar with McKinnon and Rantanen. Whether Drouin actually sticks, whether, like you said, maybe that second line clicks and they don't want to split it up, and it's Ross Colton up at bat or Thomas Tatar. That is a nice bicycle to ride sidecar too.
Jay, I'm going to do mine first so you can continue mining the Josh Morrisey finishing topic of what his career stats look like before last year. So my top...
For context, I found it, and I'm feeling a little less confident about mine.
Well, okay. So here
I might be the hot take.
There might be other factors here at play, like when was the coaching change to bonus? And what was his deployment?
Do you remember what we've talked about multiple times in all these division previews? Track record speaks volumes. Okay? That's all I'm going to say. So my top 3 in this division, I'm going to say that it's not interchangeable. I think Dallas wins this division outright. Colorado second. And then, yes, as much as I think there's question marks in Winnipeg, they both have elite goaltenders, so I think it's between the Preds and the Jets in third, meaning one of them will probably get a wild card. Mostly comes down to me, who plays better on the season or who stays healthy from a Saros Hellebuyck standpoint. I'm going to take a little bit of a different perspective on my guys for the most part in this league. I'm going to book 2 guys to pop this year and deliver huge value from their ADPs. Boldy and Nichushkin are going to pop this year, and they will outperform their ADPs in both Fantrax and Yahoo. I also think there's potential for Radish if he can get the deployment with Bedard. I wouldn't say like go out and draft him or anything, but I think he's definitely a watch list for guy for me after my drafts, because if he can get with Bedard and stick on that PP1, he has some potential to have a higher ceiling from an output standpoint. And then another guy, because I don't think Cooley's going to come in and drive him out of that 1C, is Barrett Hayton. I think he has an opportunity this year to really staple himself to Keller and Schmaltz with the Coyotes, and I think his ceiling could be 65 to 70 points if he can hold Cooley off and maintain line 1, power play 1. And I think, you know, as much as you guys want Velarde to continue his Band-Aid Boyd ways, I think his deployment alone, if he can hold 2C and hold power play 1 in Winnipeg, I think there's some high upside there as a solid sleeper. So, Jay, let's before you give us your top 3 teams and your guys, let's just dive into this Morrisey thing, this Morrisey topic. My 2 questions. What was his final total output points-wise last year?
So, he finished the 22-23 season, his breakout season, with a beautiful 76
That's his career
points,
high,
but
right?
that was more
okay,
than
so
double.
For the listeners, that means he's never eclipsed 47 points in his career, correct? Okay,
30.
so he's never eclipsed 37 points in his career. And how many goals did he score last year?
He scored 12 goals.
Okay, and how many goals has he scored previously to that? It was his career high.
That was also his career high.
So I digress.
So he set a career high in 21-22, which is good, and then he smashed that in 23-24, 22-23. So obviously, with exponential math learning, he is projected for 152 points this season.
So I'm gonna fall in the middle. I'm gonna fall in the middle of Jay and Alan on Morrisey here. I do believe opportunity. What he did last year and his deployment will not change. What he did last year will change. But I still think the ceiling is now higher for him because opportunity and deployment will not change. He's never, Jake, correct me, has he ever scored double-digit goals before?
That one season where he got 12 was the only one.
Okay, so he's never scored double-digit goals before. I think he could get to 10. I definitely don't think he could get to 12 again. And again, I think, again, the ceiling for me is 60 to 65 points because he doesn't play on an upper tier power play at the moment. They could be better this year. And he's not surrounded, like your comparison, Jay, with elite players and playing in an upper tier power play like Montour is in Florida, regardless of Montour's injury status right now. So, all right, Jay, let's finish her off and wrap up these division previews. Give us who you think are the top 3 teams in this division and your guys you're going to be either targeting in your drafts or keeping an eye on.
Top 3 is everybody covered. I think it's going to be Colorado. They're going to stay healthy this year. They're not going to get through that rough patch where they couldn't have anybody on the top line healthy at the same time. They're going to run away with the Central Division. They're going to be joined by Dallas, J-Row, and the Otter. The team after them, I still do believe in Kaprizov. I think Minnesota is immensely valuable, not necessarily in goalies for their tandem potential, but in terms of keeping each goalie fresh enough to get the dub. I definitely do see Minnesota finishing third. And everybody else, I could see as a bubble playoff team, with the obvious exceptions of St. Louis and Chicago and Arizona. Actually, so I do see both Nashville and Winnipeg as competing for the last bubbly playoff spot. And the real value, strangely, Robert Thomas is getting drafted, 170? That is insane value for a guy that's literally passing all the time. So he's going to be surrounded by two shooters that are shooting permanently. The real value, though, is in the 80. If you are hovering around the 85th to 100th pick, if your picks are around in that area, keep your eye out on a couple of these guys, because they're probably going to be around, and they all four of these guys from this Central Division stand immense potential to outperform their value. Pavelski, the guy is currently projected to be, his ADP is 87. He is not just an 87. He has the potential beyond it if Father Time does not smack him in the face. Well, Ehlers is in there too. I'm hesitant on his ADP, but yeah, it's the feast or the famine, right? He stands a chance. Buchnevich and Nishushkin are both Nishushkin and okay, I guess I'll read them off individually. So Buchnevich is gonna get the ice time. He's getting drafted at 92. He can outperform that. Nishushkin is getting drafted at 93, position scarce at right wing. He can outperform that. And again, it goes back to Alan's point about being top line with Colorado as well. And Scheifele, he has no Pierre-Luc Dubois to compete with him against. He's getting drafted at 97. That guy is going to feast and feed Connor all season.
Scheifele's a great center if you're fading centers.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
But that was always the beauty for him, was that if you faded him, it's it's this point per game center here.
That's right. Yeah, what
about
you,
I did
Craig?
mine while you were mining for Morrisey, just so that I could tell you that you're crazy. All right, boys. Well, let's wrap it up, and I would just want to thank the listeners once again for hanging with us over these division previews. They were a long haul for us. There was a lot of stuff done behind the scenes, but we're really happy and privileged to be here with you along for the ride with the Taxi Squad, and we're really excited to continue to pump out content for you guys and represent the five-hole community and Zach and TJ and Raj to the best of our abilities now and throughout the season. I hope you guys are still enjoying the content, and we certainly are having fun with it. And, like us and follow the channel and give us a 5-star rating on any of your podcast providers. Come join the five-hole Discord community. There's tons of hockey talk going on right now, even some funny fantasy football talk going on one another channels as well. Come hit Jay and myself and Alan up on Twitter or in the Discord if you have any fantasy hockey questions. We're happy to answer any of those. Any feedback for the show as we kind of get rolling into the in-season content, which is coming at you. Definitely, again, remember that Raj's 5-hole Fantasy Hockey Guide limited series is on its way to your ears and to your podcast providers. So definitely give that a rating, give that a like, pump that up as much as you can and give that a listen. I'm sure Raj is going to have a lot of great stuff and some great gems and to make us all better, whether you're running a league, joining a league, a new GM. I'm sure Raj is going to have a lot of juicy stuff in there for us. So definitely keep an eye on the channel for that. We're going to drive the van cab back to the East Coast now. We're going to shut her down, but we definitely still have some spicy preseason content coming your way. We're going to do a My Guys, My Dudes episode. We are going to do a contract year episode, and then that will kind of roll us into our in-season content with a couple of juicy episodes to kind of bridge the gap between our week previews and our weekend previews before we can really get rolling on the Tuesday trends. Last but not least, before we say goodnight, the guys and I agreed after last session and last show with the Central Division Preview Part 1 that we are going to launch our inaugural fantasy or 5-hole Taxi Squad Listener League. We will do up to 2 leagues, 12 teams in each, run by Jay and myself. We will post those in Discord, hopefully in the next week. It will be first come, first serve, depending on how the lay of the land comes out. At least one of myself, Jay, or Alan will be in one of the leagues. You might have two of us in there. You might have all three of us, depending on how many listeners jump in. We decided to, as a team, I think we will, for the inaugural season, I think we will make these a free leagues. But what we will do is we will provide some sort of incentive prize package, whether that's an NHL swag prize package of your choice from the 5-hole taxi squad team. But we will get back to you with more information on what the prizing will look like and how that will work. But we really hope that we can fill these two leagues. We'll have a lot of fun with you guys. We'll try to pick the best possible draft night ahead of the season on Yahoo to do it quick and easy for those that can make it. And maybe if any of the guys are available, maybe we'll do at least my league live, and we'll just do that as a show as well. But yeah, that'll be a lot of fun with you guys. Until next time, thank you again. And the Taxi Squad will be back. We will turn the fare off for now, and we hope for you to join us again. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
We'll pick up later.